Welcome back to the podcast for event planners, EventBuzz by Purplepass. I'm your host, Savannah McIntosh, and today we are talking with an industry expert who has spent the last 20 years of her life creating campaigns for a variety of industries, including live events, entertainment, and consumer products. She has worked with clients such as Live Nation, Cirque du Soleil, Pocket Watch, and other small businesses and startups. She is also the founder and CEO of the Modern Muse Company, a California-based full-service marketing agency that specializes in increasing revenue and brand awareness. I'm so excited to welcome to the show and this week's episode, Brigette Young. Okay, so welcome to the show. Hi, Brigette. How are you doing today? And thanks again for sitting down and taking the time to talk with me.
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So I already did a brief introduction so the listeners know a little bit about you and what you do and how awesome you are. But why don't you tell us more about the Modern Muse Company?
Sure. So I started the Modern Muse Company about 5 years ago. My marketing career has spanned about 20 years at this point, which is crazy to say out loud. But I really felt like there was an opportunity to have an agency that was more holistic in nature than a lot of the companies that were already out there. I worked for a lot of different companies over the years, and each specialized in a different arena of sorts. But starting my own company allowed me to put a focus on things like brand partnerships and live events. And again, just the holistic strategy of bringing together different types of marketing into one place that could most benefit each client. So we've worked with a lot of different industries over the years, everything from, consumer goods and family products to, as I said, live events, media, technology, a little bit of everything, which I absolutely love because I am somebody who gets bored very easily. So the more interesting and the more forward thinking, the better as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. And I like how you said it's more holistic and that's how we are too, because you learn that everyone doesn't fit into one box, especially with marketing. It doesn't work that way. You got to do a little bit of everything and what works for them and their needs.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. And I don't know how it's been with COVID, but I know your company specializes in creating consumer campaigns that include mini pop-up events. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And we haven't done as much.
I was going to ask.
Yeah,
I was going to ask if you're able to still do them or if you've pivoted to like online campaigns for the moment or just paused.
Well, the funny thing is I haven't hosted a significant event since my own wedding, which was February of 2020, believe it or not.
Lucky.
However,
so lucky.
Snuck that one in right before the buzzer.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So what's interesting though is while I feel that those are all coming back and I'm getting a lot of inquiries about doing things like that, especially this spring. I feel like it's really picked up again. But between February 2020 and roughly now, everything I've done has been online with one really unique exception. And I'm really excited that you asked about this because I think this was one of the most creative ways I saw a company get around lockdown. Last year, there's a company called Raw Artists based out of Los Angeles, and they're, artist showcases. They get people together from all persuasions of the arts and host these beautiful showcases. They do it internationally, actually. They're just based in LA. But last year, watching all their artists suffer because they really couldn't, they weren't earning the revenue they were used to. They weren't able to showcase. The owner of Raw, a woman named Heidi Luera, came up with the idea to do what was called the National Arts Drive. And in June of last year, she created this hybrid virtual and in-person event, which was, in my mind, just so interesting and such a creative take on things. And basically, it encouraged artists of all kinds to create these artistic displays outside of their homes or places of work, or it could have been a shop in their downtown location, or possibly a city resource. And then the virtual component was that people could actually drive by and go check out the art from their cars. So safely and at a distance, but it was all mapped out. That was the virtual component. And you could figure out where these displays were in your community. And to me, it was a massive undertaking. Over 3,000 artists from 6 different countries ended up participating. And that was worldwide, even though the intention was to have it in the US. But that was a really creative example that I was part of. Luckily, I got to help a little bit with the marketing and PR and stuff like that. But that was one of the most unique and interesting and creative ways I saw a company leverage the fact that, you couldn't truly do things in person, but you could kind of get creative with how.
Yeah.
So that's the one that really stands out in my mind. And that's really been the only event with a live component that I've participated in about a year.
Wow. Well, first, just like hearing you talk about that, I can't even imagine the planning that had to go into that to make it all. That kind of stresses me out.
They are logistical geniuses.
Yeah. But yes, that's amazing. And that's a cool part. I mean, I don't want to say a cool part and COVID in the same sentence, but that's the cool part about the pandemic, because people have had to become super creative and kind of go beyond what they ever thought was possible. And it's working. Like, I have some people that in the beginning were just really did not want to do anything like virtual or go online or stream events at all, because they were super traditional. And I totally get that. But they had to either, evolve with what's happening or nothing at all. And now they're like, I think when we go back to in person, we'll probably still do like hybrid, because we've reached so many more people and kind of like doing things that you might think are crazy in the beginning and seeing it work. It's cool to kind of, see some sort of like a positive thing come out of this, but good for them. Yeah.
It forced innovation, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. And I think you're right. I think virtual is here to stay to a large extent, because we figured out how to leverage it in a much more effective way over the past year.
Yeah, exactly. And before I move on, since you brought up that event that you guys worked with, what were some things you had to do when it came to like the marketing side? Because it's different now, marketing a virtual event versus, in-person experiences.
Yeah, we did a lot of outreach to arts-centric organizations of every size, shape, and color you can possibly think of. And I think, people were so hungry for some sort of experience and some way to express themselves. This was also on the heels of, a large social justice movement. So people were feeling a lot. And I think the idea was that, they really needed something to grab onto and look forward to. And both from the artist side and the consumer side of things, there was a lot of interest. So we saw a lot of support from what we were referring to as partner organizations that supported the arts, but even community, like very, very community driven publications, lots of social support, artist influencers were getting on board with it. So it was a bit unique. I would say it was much more grassroots in a lot of ways. We hope to get a lot of major media exposure, again, with just what was going on with COVID and the social justice issues in the country at the time. That didn't go as planned. So we ended up just going smaller and more targeted. And I think, considering that for an inaugural year in a pandemic, there were over 3,000 participants. I feel like that was amazing. Still an incredible success.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of partner outreach and just, asking the favor and just talking to people about what it was. And people got excited. They understood it and they got excited for us. So it was pretty awesome.
I know. Yeah. Like you said, people are hungry. We're all hungry for those something. If it has the word events in it, okay, cool. Yes, let's do it. We're here. But that's amazing. I'm glad you guys were able to help out and be a part of such an awesome, intricate event that brought the arts together. Because honestly, I've seen a lot of different industries, but the arts are one that just really hurt my heart, because they can't do what they love. They can, but it's not the same. Especially theater really hurts my heart because they're doing virtual events. And that's amazing, but I can't wait for the day where I can actually go and experience theater in person again, because it's just a different experience.
It's so powerful, both for the artists themselves and the performers.
But we're getting there.
Who are watching, it's catharsis. So we all missed it very greatly. Yeah. And I love that things are starting to change.
Yeah. And my other point, when you said with the pop-ups, the mini pop-ups, that slowly, I think, since things are starting to change and everyone's getting vaccinated and we're starting to go back in person, I still wanted to ask you guys about these mini pop-up events that you specialize in, because you are the experts. And when we do go back to in-person and more of like experiential marketing, I wanted to talk about, what are these mini pop-up events that you do and how can brands use them for exposure?
I think, I've seen a lot of these mini pop-ups pop back up.
Yay.
And so I do think everything is starting to proliferate again. And in the past, the example that I love to use, just because I think it's such a fun one, we've done over the past handful of years, we've worked a lot with Cirque du Soleil and in Southern California and helping them promote their touring shows through brand partnerships. And one of those that we've done consistently over the years has been with the IKEA stores in Southern California. And I think for me that the overarching joy in that is that, you kind of, if you're anything like me, you kind of have to work yourself up to go to an IKEA. And it's not because IKEA is not wonderful. It is. But, it's going to be crowded. It's going to be, really an endeavor. And so we were doing these in-store takeovers to celebrate these Cirque shows. And we would, do everything from redecorate the entry areas with using IKEA product, but things that thematically fit the theme of the shows. We would have these life-size cardboard cutouts of characters from the show throughout the store. Some of them were, photo ops as well. So they were very shareable in that way. We would play the music from the show. We would have B-roll on the IKEA TVs. We'd have costume characters roaming the stores, interacting, taking pictures with customers, handing out flyers that had, a custom discount code. We'd have games that families could participate in and they'd win branded prizes.
Wow.
We'd have activities like face painting and craft making for kids, again, all thematically tied back to the shows.
Yeah.
We did like live ticket giveaways, we did all kinds of things. But the best part of all of that was, standing near the front of the show and watching people come in and just the surprise on their faces. And then that, kind of like, what is this? And then smiling because they weren't expecting it. And I'm just a huge fan of the old surprise and delight, just giving somebody something they weren't expecting and, putting a smile on their face, giving them a really great experience. IKEA does that intrinsically as a company.
I love IKEA.
Their employees are, having worked with these people, they are incredible. They really are, from top to bottom about the customer experience. So I think it really fit with kind of their ethos as a company too. But just watching people come in and, see and be immersed in this experience that they weren't expecting, but really ended up enjoying, it really was great. And I think it created a lot of awareness. It created a lot of, brand loyalty and interest. And it was just really a win-win for everybody.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, I love IKEA. So it's already so exciting to come in. So I would be really excited. Here we go. I spent so much time in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that makes IKEA is a brilliant partner because like I said, you spend so much time in there. So you're walking through and that's a lot of exposure for you guys. So that's really smart. And I was going to ask, so you guys get the exposure, but what for IKEA, what would they really be benefiting from this partnership?
Well, there's so many levels of it. And this is, again, why I love doing these kinds of things. But it was everything from, the employees got behind it. They'd be excited about it. And, they'd have a field day with this. They'd take pictures with the characters. They'd, really, want to know what we were promoting so that they could talk about it. They really would get behind it. But I think it's the idea that, you're coming to an IKEA store and you already have an expectation of the experience you'll have. But now you're having fun. You're legitimately having fun. Maybe you were having fun before. If you're anything like me and you love the organizing section, that's fun. I am a Marie Kondo disciple. I love that kind of stuff. But, maybe, you see those husbands in tow that are like, fine, I'll be here. But like, just giving people something that really brightens their day. And, this all comes from a place of IKEA allowing it. IKEA encouraging it. So they're a brand that likes to have fun and be playful and give their customers, they do a lot to give back to their customers way above and beyond the scope of this. And the other thing we did with them, which was sort of a satellite event, was we actually brought IKEA on site to a couple of the dates where Cirque du Soleil was set up, and had them doing, giveaways. They were signing people up for IKEA family, and IKEA family members, whether they were new or existing, could get like a free bag of goodies on site. So they would come to the Cirque show that day, not really realizing, oh, I'm going to get, a goodie bag just because IKEA is here today. So, it was a very mutual experience in terms of, creating brand loyalty for both brands, but also aligning to really fun, really creative, really consumer-centric brands.
Yeah. And so what would you say for, let's say I have an event coming up and I wanted to do some sort of partnership. It's hard to know where to start or how to reach out to someone. What would you say, like where to start, or would they need someone maybe like you guys to help them form those connections and relationships?
I think for bigger brands, it's easier to have somebody that does that for you, because the partnership aspect can be, and certainly event planning can be just overwhelming. But if you're a little company and you're just trying to leverage the audience of another, brand, or, get word out about your event, I think a great place to start is with your values and your voice. What brands kind of iconically fit what you're trying to do. And who speaks about things in a way that, has the same values as you? Are they speaking about things in a way that you agree with and it resonates with your audience too? And, also understand that you need to be targeting partners that are the right size. So, if you're an event and you're just going out there for the first time and nobody's heard of you, you're probably not going to get an IKEA unless you have, something that hooks into their existing initiatives. But that's not to say that there couldn't be a local store, or restaurant, or, shop, or any number of things that makes sense for you. So, be realistic about the scale. But more importantly, make sure that your consumers match, that there's sort of a Venn diagram of, who your audience is, who their audience is, and that overlap makes intuitive sense and is going to make sense to each of your audiences.
Yeah. And I think that advice can also go hand in hand if someone is choosing to work with influencers or bloggers online. Like you said, you got to make sure it's going to go kind of be cohesive with your brand and work. You don't want someone random, but also, it's a good relationship and a good partnership. Do you guys often encourage working with influencers?
It's funny. I get asked that all the time.
Yeah, because it's so it's like so popular now.
It is. And I think, my answer is it depends. I personally don't typically advise an influencer first strategy, not because I think there's anything wrong with it, but I think you have to be selective. And I think you just touched on that. I think, when you're a small company and you're just getting started, you're going to benefit more by making sure that you have a fully optimized website, social channels, digital advertising and marketing strategy, and making sure that those pieces are in place and you've done a good job.
Yeah.
Because all the influencers in the world, generally speaking, on their own will not make or break something for you. So, I think it's really important to understand that you have to have the right pieces in place before you do anything like that. And if you do, or if you're a bigger company and that's all established and you've done it well, as you said, I think influencers can make sense, assuming that they are the right fit. I personally happen to really like micro influencers. I think if you're going to use them, find the people that it just makes sense, for their audience, for your audience, and that they integrate in a way that feels very natural. When it feels forced, I think most of us get that on a gut level, and we tune out and we forget and we don't care. So I actually have a great example that I have no affiliation with this person, but on Instagram, Splendid Rags, it's Splendid_Rags. I think she does a fabulous job, and I follow her only because I love her work. She's a visual artist. She integrates brands in a way that I feel is incredibly authentic to her own brand. And it's playful and it's fun. And in my mind, that's, if I were to do influencer campaigns more regularly, that's what it would look like. It's just a very natural integration where, the influencer has a say. It's not just, let me just repeat what the brand told me to say.
Exactly.
It's really a coming together of how do we do something that at the end of the day, the consumer will love? Because that's all that matters. Is it going to make sense? Is it going to be fun? Is it going to be memorable? Is it going to be useful?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. I just actually talked to another industry expert, and she is a social media marketer. And we were just talking about how social media has changed and evolved so much with the trends. And right now it's about being authentic and truthful, and how during the pandemic, like in the beginning, the people that were still influencers that were still out there traveling and doing things that were just like, they weren't in tune to what was going on. So yeah, I'll have to check out her account, because I like looking at that stuff too, because it can be tricky as an influencer when you're working with a brand and they're like, promote this or work with this, unless they're passionate about it and what they are working with. But that's a good point. And before we move on, for people that don't really know or aren't familiar, could you just describe a micro influencer versus like a regular influencer?
Sure. And I won't get into the semantics of specific numbers, but you're talking about, instead of 1 million followers, you're talking about, closer to like maybe 2,000 or it could be 10,000. It could even be less. It's really, again, in my mind, you want some reach, but the more important part is that these people are, again, aligned with your brand, that they do a good job of engaging. That's really important. People that, really talk back to their audience and get their audience psyched, so that when you have an offer or something to share, their audience actually cares.
Yeah. And that's the other thing that this is the last episode, by the way, if anyone wants to listen to the last person I talked to. Her name is Jordan Crump. She's a social media marketer. She's really cool. And she was saying that a lot of people focus on their like follow count. And it should be the engagement. How many people are engaging with your posts? You can have 500 followers, but if you're getting multiple comments and replies and shares and likes, that's really where the value is.
It is. Yeah, absolutely.
I think we get lost in the numbers game of, we have this amount of followers, but
I think that's going away a little bit. I know there's still some of it, and sometimes it still makes sense, but I do think we're moving to a place of authenticity across, the spectrum of marketing. I think volume is still a factor, but I think reaching the right audiences in the right ways is going to become, more important. There's going to be more focus going forward.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Good point. I just wanted to ask on that, just because, influencer movement, I don't really know how beneficial it would be for people like promoting events and stuff, but influencers are getting huge, which is crazy. I know a lot of people that have switched to just doing that for their job, which is great for them. But
bless their hearts, it's a lot of work.
I was just gonna say, like, you got it, do you? But social media stresses me out.
It's a job. It really is a job, and people, I think they see the glamour of it, but they don't realize how much hard work goes into building those followings and putting everything together. It's a lot of work.
And getting that content together how you want it. It's not just like, let me take a selfie. No. There's a lot behind the scenes. Yeah. No. You can do it, but good for them. And while we're on this topic of like influencers and being more authentic and real, I did want to kind of pick your brain. Since this time of the pandemic, have you seen a shift in marketing for events, or I guess brands in general, are in response to COVID? Have you seen a shift in marketing strategies that we should kind of focus on?
Definitely. And a lot of that is because of the shift to virtual, right? So I think the shift, first of all, it was, okay, now everything has to be virtual. And what does that look like? And to an extent, I think in the beginning, there was a lot of just, beat you over the head with it type marketing, which has its place. But then with the proliferation of how many virtual events there were, I mean, I can remember weeks where I would get invited to 5 to 10 very good events, within a week. But the reality is, who's going to be able to attend all those when all of our lives are now virtual? So I think in terms of virtual, there had to be a subtle shift over time where the marketing got better. And it wasn't just, put any old thing you could together and market it because we can't do things in person. I think the shift became that, you had to be a little bit savvier in terms of how you're reaching out to people. And, from personal experience, I feel that people learned quickly that even with a virtual event, there had to be an engagement component. It couldn't just be, a lecture. There's of course exceptions, but if you're just talking at people, it gets boring. If there's an engagement, whether it's some sort of networking component or a Q&A or, some sort of interactive event that is still virtual, I think those were some of the ones that were most successful. And, I think it's great for marketers to keep that in mind, even as we continue to have virtual events going forward. An example I can think of is that I belong to the USC Alumni Entrepreneurs Network. Mm-hmm. And we just partnered just a few weeks ago with the USC Young alumni and In Good Taste Wines to do a virtual wine tasting. And it was a really fun event because we really didn't talk about networking or work or anything like that. We just got a bunch of people together and, the host talked us through all these wines and we tasted together and commented and laughed together. And it was just a really great way to bring these groups together and have a good time, even though it was entirely virtual.
Yeah.
So I think, the engagement and the community part of it is still going to be very critical as we go forward. And that needs to be emphasized. And I think in terms of, in-person events, as they come back more and more, the micro events and whatnot, I think it's great. It's just, we need to be safe. We need to be wearing masks. We need to be outdoors. The weather's getting better. We still have to just take precautions because nobody wants to be on the hook for the person who got everybody sick. We still need to just be smart and responsible and do the most good for the most people. But, that being said, I think people, again, are so hungry for these interactions that, you could have a very simplistic, small pop-up event with just music. I mean, live music would be great, but it could just be music, DJs, whatever. Little giveaways, maybe some sort of prepackaged or pre-portioned snack or drink, as long as you're, providing it safely. At the end of the day, the surprise and delight never gets old. People appreciate that unexpected extra or that way of, coming together. So as long as you've always got the consumer in mind, I really think, you kind of can't go wrong.
Yeah. And it's going to have a big impact because we're so isolated right now. Even we might be talking to people all day, but we're talking to people through our computers, through our phones. So just something, in person or some sort of thing that resembles a small event is really going to catch someone's attention and make them stop. And like you said, with virtual events, it's hard to make it not feel like work now or make it not feel like, I have another meeting, because it's online. It resembles a Zoom call. We don't want to do that. So wine tasting sounds great.
It was more fun. Yeah. I just think you have to give something like, my barometer is always would I do this? Would I sign up for this? Would I be entertained by this? And, maybe I'm not the perfect example, but nonetheless, it gives you an idea because it's just, you can't ask people to sit through another Zoom call. You've got to get more than that.
And they got to be doing something. They can't just be sitting there watching you.
Absolutely.
The engagement. Yeah. So it's all about creativity and thinking, like you said, what would you want? How would you want to jump on another Zoom call or would you want something else? Maybe something delivered to your door that can go along with the event. That would be fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And there's a lot of good ideas now. I mean, type it up. You can find something. Everyone's suggesting different ways. So if you're short of ideas, there's always something. Okay, I think that's it. But thank you for all the advice you've given me. Before we go, is there any last minute tips or insights you would want to put out to the listeners? Maybe people looking forward to, or not looking forward, but maybe people planning events that are coming up or doing virtual events or brands online. Really, anything? Sorry, that's so broad. Anything you want to put into the world, though.
Whatever form it all takes, because it's still an evolution, as we know.
Yeah.
I think what it always comes down to for me is, set yourself up correctly, have everything be the most seamless user experience you possibly can give people, give them a reason to want to come and join you, whether it's virtually or whether it's in person, do something that's exciting enough that you would want to join, give them a great experience, and create opportunities for engagement, because while you have their ear, like that's the best time to let them get to know your event or your brand or whatever it is. So, just if you do everything with the consumer and their experience in mind, you probably can't go wrong.